Hi, I'm Lauren from Access Your Life, which is an online platform encouraging people living with disabilities and their carers to review medical equipment, share their experiences, to help other people living in similar situations achieve a brighter future. One of the things I love to talk about is travelling with a disability. It's not always easy, in fact, it's a nightmare at times. However, I don't let it stop me. I love travelling, I love seeing the world, and I enjoy using our platform to help other people do the same. Over the years, I've learned a lot about travelling with my disability, with medical equipment, a wheelchair, lots of do's and don'ts. So this video is all about my top 10 tips for travelling with a disability. Now, obviously some of these tips aren't valid if you are travelling by train or car. However, I have tried to put together a list of tips that you can still apply to most situations. So my number one tip is choosing the right flight. Obviously, if you are tied to a specific date and time, this is quite tricky. However, where possible, I prefer to choose a flight that is later in the day. This is so I can make sure my daily medications are in my system and I've had a bit of a rest before I have to go through security, sit in departures, and just go through a typical travel day that is really exhausting for anyone, let alone someone with a disability. Number two is passenger assistance. Now, under the European legislation, the airport is responsible for your care from the moment you arrive at the airport to the moment you board the plane. Then the airline is responsible for looking after you on board. There's a wide variety of services that airports and airlines offer for passengers with disabilities, whether that is assistance getting through the airport for ambulatory guests who just might struggle walking such a long distance. They provide wheelchairs or even electric buggies and they will drive you through the airport. Or if you need physical assistance pushing your wheelchair or carrying your hand luggage, they can help you through. They can also help you with the stairs at the aircraft doors, or if you're like me and can't climb stairs, they will provide some sort of lift that will take you from the ground up to the aircraft door if it isn't a flight that has a flat skywalk to the door. And finally, if you are unable to walk from the aircraft door to your seat, which bear in mind can be quite a walk, there are lots of things you can do to safely get you to your seat. However, it's not always the easiest process. Typically, there is an aisle chair that you can use and transfer from your wheelchair into the aisle chair. They will then push you to your seat on board the aircraft where you'll transfer across. This aisle chair is not comfortable, and if you physically need lifting from your wheelchair onto that chair, it's not dignified at all, and it can be quite uncomfortable if there's a lot of people. So my recommendation, if you physically cannot transfer yourself and you need help or hoisting, is to contact companies such as Easy Travel Seat, because they have devices that allow you to be hoisted more comfortably and in a more dignified way, which is, you know, it's necessary, especially if you are on a long haul flight and you're going to use that aisle chair to get to the onboard toilet. It's a much easier and safer way. So now that you've organised and booked your passenger assistance, you can move on to tip number 3, which is organising your medical supplies. My first piece of advice is never pack your vital medications, treatments and equipment in your suitcase that will be going in the hold of the aircraft. This is because it is entirely possible for you to arrive at your destination and your suitcase not be there, and it actually can take several days for them to locate it and get it to you. You can take extra cases and bags on board if needed. However, the airline may ask you for a note just to clarify why you need that extra space. However, it is vital that any medications you are taking have the prescription label on, and the name on the prescription label matches the name on your passport, because when you're going through security, they can be pretty strict. My next travel tip is protecting your equipment. particularly for those of you who travel with wheelchairs. We all know you can get to your destination, it is damaged or gone missing or something dreadful has happened to it. So prior to your day of travel, play around with your wheelchair, work out how you can protect it and what you can take off and take on board with you to avoid it getting lost. I have arrived at my destination and received my wheelchair at the gate, but my wheelchair cushion was missing because it had actually flown off in the hold, slid all the way down to the bottom of the aircraft, and it took a little while to locate. So just take into consideration what you can do to make your day of travel easier and provide you with peace of mind. Now, there are products available to help you protect your wheelchair if you have a folding frame. Using a bag to put your wheelchair in is a great idea. However, do your research and make sure you pick one that is padded and secure. Bundlebean actually have one that is fantastic for anyone with a folding frame. And another idea is PYC Wheelchair Upholstery have custom made wheelchair pads to support basically every section of your wheelchair when traveling. I recently used these on a long haul flight to Los Angeles, and typically the legs of my wheelchair always come out scratched, and because it's bright pink you see every single scratch and bump. Finally, for those of you traveling with powered equipment, take the time in advance to write out a list of instructions so the ground crew know how to handle and operate your equipment once you hand it over. And also, if you're traveling to a foreign destination where there's a language barrier, it may be worth having part of the form in English and then part of the form in the language. Say you're going to Spain, in Spanish, so the ground crew upon arrival know what to do. Once you've organised your supplies, you can move on to tip number 5, which is packing. This may seem really obvious, but I strongly advise you pack sensibly, especially if you are going to be relying on passenger assistance to get you through security in the airport. This is because it could actually take some time for you to go through the pat down and the wheelchair scan and things like that. So then your supplies and luggage is going through the scanner and coming out, and the assistants will be taking care of it for you. So I always pack in sections. I keep all my liquids together and I literally put a note on top if they are over the typical allowance. So this method also makes it extremely easy once you arrive to your destination, because you can just take those bags out, pop them on a unit, and you have everything organised for your entire trip. Finally, I would suggest making your luggage easy to identify. This is something that is super important if you are going to rely on someone to get your luggage off the baggage belt. Now, you might think taking a bright yellow suitcase is actually the easiest way to do this, but you would be surprised how many people take a bright yellow suitcase on a plane. So I typically put a coloured luggage strap around, or some ribbon around the handle, or a really eccentric luggage tag. So when I'm sat there, I can say it's the purple case with a yellow ribbon and a purple luggage belt around the middle, and they know what they're looking for, and it just makes it easier for everyone. My final piece of advice relating to planning your trip is to plan your airport experience. This may seem a little over the top, but I promise you it will save you so much time and hassle on the day. Again, this is super helpful if you are utilising the passenger assistance service, because you can tell them, this is where I want to go, I've researched it, it accommodates my needs. If you have allergies, it means you can find a restaurant or a cafe that has something that accommodates your needs. If you have a long layover and want to lie down, you know where to go. If you have sensory issues, you might want to go to a quiet room or a baby changing facility. There's all sorts of things available, especially at large international airports. So take the time, look at what's available and utilise it. It is there for you to use. Do not be ashamed. However, you may find that some of these facilities are not very common. I actually arrived at Heathrow Airport last summer and asked where the changing places toilet was, because I had my carer and my assistant's dog with me and a lot of luggage, and it is impossible to get in a standard toilet and turn everything around, and the staff didn't know what a changing places toilet was or where it was. Luckily, Felix had looked it up and planned where it was so we could work it out. But yeah, do your research. Number 7 on my list of travel tips is all about arriving at the airport. Always allow extra time when you are traveling, because so many things can happen that you don't account for, and it just again allows you to relax and not rush everything. Now, depending on the type of assistance you have organised, you may need assistance from the moment you arrive at the airport, whether that is from the car park or a drop-off point or public transport. They should have told you whether you ring a number on arrival or you press one of the kind of buttons that will alert the passenger assistance team. Other people may simply choose to have assistance just at the aircraft gate, and a little bit of support transferring on and off the plane. It truly does depend on what your needs and preferences are. However, remember what you have booked and clarify this once you get to check-in if you haven't already spoken to someone from the passenger assistance team, because they can make sure everything is in place and your trip goes as smoothly as possible. Make sure if you are traveling with equipment that you get the correct luggage tag at the check-in desk whilst you are dropping your luggage off and handing over your passports. This is particularly important for anyone that will be taking their wheelchair to the aircraft door, because it needs a specific tag that's typically orange in the UK to alert the ground staff upon arrival that your chair needs to come straight back to the aircraft door, as opposed to going to the baggage belt with the suitcases. So if you've followed my previous packing tips, going through security should be a breeze. However, I know firsthand that it can be so daunting. So don't be afraid to speak up if you need help or if you need a little bit of extra time, because it is a system, especially in large airports, and they just want you in and out. But that doesn't suit all of us, and if you need to take your time or you need to explain how your oxygen machine operates and that it can't go through the scanner, speak up. Do not be afraid. And if you have someone from the passenger assistant team with you, they can do this for you, so let them know what you need. Once you're through security, you can put into place all the plans that you have previously made about what restaurants you want to do, which areas you maybe want to go and have a sit down in. If you are utilising the passenger assistance services, they may ask you to wait in a particular zone once they've taken you to a shop or to the bathroom. This is because they obviously have to help a lot of passengers in one day. So just bear this in mind if you have plans but you are requiring help the entire way through the airport. Tip number 8 is the flying experience. Regardless of whether you make your own way to the gate or rely on the passenger assistance team, if you have a preference as to whether you board first or last, let the staff know as soon as you arrive. Once you get to the aircraft door, remember, if you have that special tag on your wheelchair or equipment, let the crew know. Say, this is my chair, it is tagged. Upon arrival, please look out for it and let the ground staff know there should be a chair returning to the door, because you are not at the aircraft door once that plane lands, so they can advocate and communicate with the ground staff to ensure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. Finally, once the plane lands, do not be ashamed to stay in your seat until your wheelchair is at the door. I've sometimes been told, oh, it's coming, or the team will be, up the walkway to help you. No, that's not acceptable. Like, I need help now, and I need my wheelchair at the door for a reason. It was tagged. I've even had language barriers, and I've even had the French police called on me because I refused to move. And this was after a horrific day of travel. But luckily the pilot was able to advocate for me and saw why it was imperative I wasn't just shoved in one of those huge airport wheelchairs that have no support at all, and I needed my own equipment. So stand your ground. And then the assistance team will be able to help you all the way through. Number 9 is accommodation. Like when planning your flight or airport experience, research what type of accommodation meets your needs and preferences. So many hotels, apartments, villas and things say they're accessible and they really aren't. So regardless of what they say on their site, contact them either by the phone or email. Ask them for pictures, ask them for dimensions. Say, how big is your lift? Do you have a roll-in shower or a bathtub? Do you have handrails? Literally ask them all those nitty-gritty questions that you need to know to make your stay as easy and accommodating as possible. Another thing to take into consideration is, what do you plan to do whilst you're away? If you plan to visit specific public attractions or go to the beach, anything like that, work out how are you going to get there from the hotel. Is it within walking distance? Will you need to use public transport? Because these factors may play a big part in which hotel or accommodation you actually use. My final piece of advice is make sure you have good travel insurance. And this links in to tip number 9, because I would highly recommend doing this before you book your accommodation. So should anything happen and you're unable to fly, or you get a crazy crisis like COVID-19 and you're unable to go on your holiday, you have insurance in place. Make sure you have something that it covers you for every eventuality. I have been rushed into a foreign hospital before for reasons that were totally unexplainable, but because I had good insurance, everything was okay. So we've reached number 10 on my list of travel tips, and this section is purely to run over my recommendations. First on my list is obviously the Easy Travel Seat that I mentioned earlier on in this video. This is an excellent product and is designed to help you transfer in a safe, comfortable and dignified manner, which is so important if you require that type of help. Next up is Flying Disabled. Chris Wood knows all about how uncomfortable and embarrassing the process of transferring from your wheelchair to an aircraft can be. So he is actively campaigning for wheelchair users that require powered, supportive devices to be able to stay in their wheelchairs on board. And this is so important. So definitely go and look him up if you are interested in supporting that campaign, because it's vital and it is going to change the way air travel works for passengers with disabilities at some point in the future. Next up is QEF, which offer a try before you fly scheme. Similar to the Easy Travel Seat, they have things that can just make the process of transferring and actually on board once you're in the seat a lot comfier and more supportive, especially if you need head support or spinal cushions, things like that. They have a lot available and you can actually go to their centre and literally try them out before you fly, which is great. Finally, if you are thinking, Lauren, these are a lot of great tips, but I am unable to do that research, or this is all a little bit overwhelming, contact an agency. However, if you're going to do this, I highly recommend contacting someone who is either disabled themselves or has a lot of experience of booking trips for passengers of all abilities. This is because they will truly understand the nitty-gritty things that need to be in place to support you. And that is why I recommend Nick from Travel Counsellors. He lives with a disability and he provides an excellent service for anyone, whether that is purely just booking a flight or booking an entire holiday. He can help with the whole process and he will understand your position. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I understand this is probably a lot to take in, so if you'd like to read about my travel tips and more details, go to our website and you will find a series of blog posts all about traveling with a disability and some other bonus tips about how to stay cool if you're going somewhere hot, or stay warm if you're going somewhere that's absolutely freezing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!